Welcome back to the Invisible Wheelchair Podcast. This week we're doing the best of 2021. And today we're going back to January of 2021 with podcast number 52, I Want to Be Positive, Maybe Not. This is one about how to be positive. Can we be positive? What do you have to do? And is it real? So before we do that though, we want to hear a word from the sponsor and then we'll go on to the podcast.
Today I'm here to talk about Q Science's sleep spray. Q Sciences has a number of different sprays. There's a melatonin sleep spray that contains melatonin, 5-HTP, and L-theanine. And we've used other melatonin products to help our children with falling asleep. Melatonin is something that occurs naturally in our body that helps us quiet and calm down for sleep. And yet I really feel like I've seen a difference in the spray versus other products. Our youngest is here to talk about it. What things did you like better about the spray versus the other things?
I don't like the chew tablets because they leave like a weird taste, and they're mainly like they also have like you get bits in your teeth.
Okay, so Q Science's spray.
It's a lot better, I'd say. The taste is pretty decent and it works well.
Okay. I'm happy with the quality of these products and how they're helping our whole family. If you'd like to learn more,
simply go to qsciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com. That's the letter Q, sciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com, or visit invisiblewheelchair.com and find out more information there.
There are a lot of supplement products out there, yet you want one that's of good quality. Check out Q Sciences for your family.
This podcast was recorded January 6, 2021. This is podcast number 52. I want to be positive, but maybe not. So today in this podcast, I want to talk about positive direction. And I have to give credit to where this comes from to my good friend, Bert Freeman. Bert has a company called Talk Associates, and he developed this idea of positive direction. Well, I should say he developed it. I'm not sure about if it was strictly his development or not, but that's where I got it from, and I want to give him the credit on that. Again, it's Bert Freeman with Talk Associates. But the idea is positive direction. You know, a lot of people come into my practice to work on their anxiety or whatever, and they'll tell me, you know, I don't want to talk negative. I really just want to tap on the positive. And that's a great idea because, you know, we want to be positive. We want to have a positive feeling about ourselves. There's just one kind of problem with that, is that, you know, the negative tends to come in and take away from that. You know, I call my negative the little munchkin on my shoulders, that when I try to think of positive, or I try to do something positive, my little munchkin is there to kind of kick me in the side of the head and go, but that ain't going to work because do you remember, or you can't do that, or you don't have enough of that, or you don't have enough money, or whatever the negative message is, just shot down any kind of positive thought. Some years ago, many years ago actually, when I was in sales, I used to try to do positive affirmations in front of the mirror. You know, I'm such a good salesman. I want to make $1 million this year. Those kind, you know, trying to do positive affirmations to boost myself up. And that little munchkin man on my shoulders used to tear me up. You can't do that. You remember that sale you messed up last week, last month, whatever it was? Or you don't have enough money. You don't have the time. You don't have the talent. Whatever it might be, it would just knock that affirmation right into the hole. So that's what I say. What I say to those clients that come in that want to only talk positive is, you know what? That's a great thought, but as long as the negative is there, it's going to knock you down. And then what happened was, too, is I did a workshop, one of my own workshops, that I invited Bert, my friend Bert Freeman, to come talk to that workshop, and he brought up the positive direction. Well, before the workshop, before the presentation, Bert called me up and he said, "Hey, I want to go through my presentation with you so that you know what I'm going to talk about and see how it fits in and all that," which is great. And so he did a presentation where he showed me a PowerPoint, and one of the slides in the PowerPoint showed a cup, or not a cup, a glass of water half filled. It's only half the water inside the cup or glass. So looking at this glass of half-filled water, Bert asked me, "What do you think the positive way of stating about that glass?" I said, "Well, it's half full." And he said, "What is the positive way of looking at it?" And I said, "Well, it's half full." He goes, "What if your goal is to have an empty glass?" And he said, "Wouldn't the goal then be, wouldn't you look at that as half empty?" I thought, well, that's interesting. So then the next slide was a picture of a gear shift, which had PRNDL, I think, something like that on it. It was a gear shift out of a car, automatic. And he said, what would you consider the positive on those letters? And I pretty quickly said, well, D for drive. He said, what if your goal is to get out of the driveway? It would be R for reverse. So what the point of it was that it was your goal of where you were going, and you wanted to head in a positive direction towards your goal. And I thought that was so brilliant that I now teach this in the work I do when I'm working with somebody in getting themselves to a better place, getting past their anxiety. We talk about positive direction. So, their goal may be way up high. I always use as an example the idea of somebody that is lividly angry. They're so angry they want to kill somebody, let's say. Just as an example now. But their goal or their idea is to be happy, joyously happy maybe. So those are very, very stretched apart. One is over here and one is way over there, or way up there. Let's say way up there and way down. The, livid is way down there and that joyous is way up there. So you want to get to the joyous place. And that cannot happen by one big felled swoop or one big felled leap from lividly angry to joyously happy for a couple of reasons. One is that it would be too big of a leap. The mind would be overwhelmed by that, overpowered by that. And so that the mind would shut down and it wouldn't accept it, wouldn't do it. It would just be too much. You wouldn't really handle it well in your mind. Second of all, what I found, and I'll tell it in this story, I was dealing with my mentor, the one that taught me the EFT. She's a master of it. And it was in session with her one time. We used to have sessions to kind of help me get through things. And I still work with another master now. But I was working with her, and it had been about the last 10 years of at that point, we had gone through some pretty major traumatic stuff, including the OCD, which is what this website is based on. And it was such a rough year. And I came into her just kind of almost whining and complaining about how bad of a year it was. And I said to her, I just wish that I could go back to 10 years ago when everything was our family was in a good, kind of a normal family. We didn't have all this anxiety and stuff going on. And she looked at me and she said, well, why would you want to do that? And I said, well, because it was a happy time. It was a better time. Our family was getting along, all of that kind of stuff. And she looked at me and she said, now, did you not learn a bunch of stuff in that 10-year period? And are you different than you were back then? I said, well, yeah, I did. I learned stuff, sure. And yeah, I'm a different person than I was back then. And did what you learn do good for you? Did you get benefit from it? Did you learn and grow from it? I said, well, yeah, I did. And she said, then why would you want to go back to 10 years ago and lose all of that? And it was like a light bulb moment for me to realize all the lessons that I learned. And actually at that point then I actually thanked my daughter at the time for being such a wonderful teacher to me. Because of what we went through and all that, I learned all the things that help me now with clients to be able to understand what they're going through with their anxiety, to know some of the problems that they might be having and how they might be able to deal with it. So I learned so much from that there would be no way that I could have leaped 10 years, that 10 years time, gone from where I was to what I'm doing now, and had the experience that necessary to do what I do, and the talent or whatever. So it was very important that I went through those times. I wouldn't necessarily want to go through them again. It was really tough time, a lot of stuff. And you can hear my story in some of the podcasts that I've done. So what this positive direction means is that you take small steps to get to that, from the lividly angry to the joyous place, are small increments or small steps. And why it's called positive direction is because if you think about it, if you look at each one of those, look down on each one of those steps. So for instance, with the lividly angry scenario, you might go from lividly angry to just angry. Might be a step. But if you looked on that step, looked down on it and you said, look at that anger, you'd go, well, that's not really positive. No, it's not. Yet, those steps are climbing you towards the direction that you want to go. So yeah, you don't leap from lividly angry to joyously happy. Yet, you can go from lividly angry to just angry, and that be a step in the right direction. And the reason I bring this into this particular podcast is because with OCD and dealing with ERP and dealing with any kind of treatment really with anxiety, it's little steps that make a difference. We've talked about ERP and how it takes a lot of time. It's very methodical. The steps are slow. The progress is slow. But it gets you to where you want to go, a positive direction. With my daughter's ERP, it was methodical, tiny steps. She'd have to, like I think I explained in one of the podcasts, like she couldn't touch things. She couldn't touch we couldn't take her to the therapist because she couldn't get in the car. She couldn't even touch the handle on the car to open it or the handle on the door. So what we had to do as part of ERP was take a picture of that door handle, and she had that first step was just looking at the picture, which drove her crazy, and sit with it. And it took us, especially on the first time, it took us a couple of weeks just to get past that step of doing it every day, a couple times a day, every day. So it's methodical, but it steps in a positive direction. And that's what positive direction is all about. Because we want to lead to a place of positive direction. We also have to understand, I think, in the positive direction that it's like anything, it's 2 steps up and 1 step back, or 3 steps up and 1 step back sometimes. Or you may go climb some steps, 4 or 5 steps, and then reverse a step or 2. But it's still heading in the right direction. There was a thought that every decision that we make, we tend to classify as good or bad, really still progresses us forward. That I read a lot with Neil Donald Walsh, who wrote a book called Conversation with God. Don't go into that so much, but he brings up this fact of that each thing progresses us forward. He talks about each minute is a death of that minute, and it will never be back. We move to the next minute, the next thing. And whether it's bad or good, it moves us to the next thing. So it's our life really, truly is moving constantly forward. It just doesn't feel good sometimes. It moves us in a negative way forward, but it's still moving us forward. So this concept of positive direction to me is excellent, and it's something I think we, especially when we're dealing with anxiety, OCD, that we have to be aware of, that we have to really follow to understand what it's going to take to get us past this thing. Because we have to get past it to see that there's the other side of it, and it takes time. It takes a lot of time. It doesn't happen overnight, and we got to look for these little increments of change, these little positive directions. It's very important because we can't make the big leaps. Trust me, I know the big leap scenario. We did it in ERP. They call it flooding, where you just go at the biggest thing. If you're afraid of touching things, you just put your hand on it and touch it anyway, right away, kind of thing. Something like that. I'm not perfect on flooding because I don't really like it a whole lot. But that doesn't work. That's too big of a leap. And like I said, we discovered that we were, and I think I talk about this in one of the other podcasts, but with my first daughter, that when we were going through it, it was a really tough thing. And like I said, she couldn't touch things. Library books were not something she could touch. There was a whole story behind every library book. It had been touched by a person who touched something, and it was, so we were working on that and we were doing the very methodical thing. Like I said, I think we had a picture of one. First, I think we just went through the thought of, a library book, that kind of thing. Well, one Saturday, she and I were working on that premise of, going through the steps, and she kind of progressed through steps really fast that day. We had made it to the point of she could look at a book and I think put the edge of her finger on a book, and it was okay. It wasn't tremendous, but it was okay. But this particular Saturday, she was really revved up that she could touch it and really wasn't feeling it. And I said, could you put, a couple fingers on it? And she did that, and she felt pretty good about it. So, we were texting the therapist and asking her, what should we do? Is this okay? Etc. And she said, well, if she's okay with it, maybe you could step forward. Well, we took a big leap, and she grabbed the book, opened it, and looked at it, and she did really good. She's like, I can handle this. And we thought we were celebrating, dancing up and down, and all that kind of good stuff. And so the day went fine. She was really happy about it and all that. The next morning she got up, and you would have thought we had, bombed her room or something. I don't know. It was just, she went ballistic on it, and it sent her backwards probably 6 months, where she got on the couch and couldn't get off. She couldn't touch anything, and we had lost all the progress we had made with everything that we had worked on. So I understand the leap too big can be dangerous, and so it needs to be a positive direction. It needs to be slowly but surely heading towards the direction that you want. So that's positive direction. It's something to think about, the methodical way of approaching anxiety and getting past it, getting to where you want to be. Give yourself pats on the back. Celebrate the tiniest of little bit of progress that you can make with something, and it will get you further along, because then the next one could be slightly bigger. And eventually you're making some pretty good sized steps, but you're doing it because you're now used to doing it. So that's positive direction. Remember again my dear friend Bert Freeman with Talk Associates for giving me this and passing along something that has been so helpful for me and so much part of my business. So take care, work on that positive direction, and keep on going. Take care. This concludes this podcast. We really would appreciate your comments. Simply leave a comment at www.invisiblewheelchair.com. There, you're able to submit a comment that will help us determine future podcasts. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the podcast, please email don@invisiblewheelchair.com. Remember, there is a corresponding tapping recording for each of the podcasts, with the exception of the interview podcast. You can find these tapping recordings and archive past podcasts at www.invisiblewheelchair.com. Finally, there is relief for OCD, and we at FamilyOCD.com and FocusedHealthyFamily.com can help you find that relief. Again, you can contact us through those sites, FamilyOCD.com or FocusedHealthyFamily.com. You can also find us on Facebook at Invisible Wheelchair Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at InvisibleWheel1, that's the number 1, or at FamilyOCD. So thank you for listening. Keep tapping and transcending your life to new heights.